Welcome back. When you talk about overcoming adversity, when you talk about achieving a goal, I have the person here who is a true inspiration. Tumi Oguntala.
Oguntala.
Well, isn't it a beautiful name? Sure beats Smith, if you know what I mean. What's the derivation of Oguntala?
It's King of Iron from the Yoruba culture. My family emigrated here from Nigeria in the 70s, so
Wow.
that's the origin of the name.
That's a spectacular name. But probably even more spectacular is that Tumi is the winner of
The at-home prize for The Biggest
Right.
Loser.
Right, as you know, The Biggest Loser is a very, very popular program. But despite the fact that it's a popular program and despite the fact that you're a winner, when we were talking before we went on air, I can't believe what you accomplished. You shed 175 pounds.
Yeah,
Is that true?
175 pounds, absolutely. It was almost 55% of my body, which was actually a record for the show, for
Right.
an at-home winner.
I
Yeah.
think it's a record period. And over what period of time?
It was 7 months from start to finish.
Got it.
So I weighed in at 319 pounds when I first got to the ranch.
Yeah, sure.
And over the next 7 months, I lost about 100 on the ranch and about another 75 at home.
You know, I want to get into some of the personal aspects of this, because how emotional it is. But first, what's it like being on The Biggest Loser?
It is really fascinating because I was a fan of the show. I will tell you that before the show aired in the early 2000s, I was one of those people, because I was morbidly obese, who thought about bariatric surgery, being frustrated. And then I saw these morbidly obese people becoming athletes.
Right.
And I said, there's no way if I can still walk, that I'm going to do that. So it was my dream to be able to go on the show, and sure enough, I got it.
You fulfilled your dream.
I did.
What was it like being that overweight? Because if I'm doing the math correctly, that's over 300 pounds.
Yeah, I weighed more than my fiance. I had been morbidly obese for
Right.
20 years, so I was not used to interacting socially the way I would. Even though I had this personality, I was always a bright, loving person, it definitely made my world a lot smaller than it was.
I'm sure it did. Subject to ridicule, I'm sure, subject to just self-esteem issues, self-confidence issues.
I think not so much ridicule to my face. People may certainly have talked about my weight
Right.
privately, but it was more the way I felt about myself. And I think, we've all seen big people who have dignity and who carry themselves with respect. And, certainly I'd like to think I was one of them, but I think more importantly, I didn't feel good about myself and what I was reflecting. I work
Right.
in healthcare. And I've been in healthcare for over 20 years, and I've been morbidly obese when one of the biggest issues facing healthcare is obesity. So it was very difficult.
Give us and our viewers a sense of what it's like emotionally to go through this kind of a project, spiritually, emotionally.
Well, being on The Biggest Loser, one of the things that differentiates the show is that they really focus on why you gained weight. And for me, they really did a lot of digging into my personal story. As I said, my parents came here when I was a very young girl. I was born in this country, but my parents split when I was very young, and my mother died when I was in my teens. And that really made my family fall apart, which was the beginning of me turning to food for comfort. And over years, up until I was 30s, I had slowly gained weight every year until I became very morbidly obese. And so there was just a series of letdowns and isolation from my family falling apart that had really led to that. And the show really was focusing on, how did she get here? They
Right.
didn't just do the workouts and everything, but Jillian, who was my trainer on the show, really was focused on why was Tumi turning to food? What was the underlying social issue that
Right.
made her look to food for comfort?
Sure, because if you think about it, it's one thing to go through the regimen of the dieting and all of that, but your mindset has to be ready for it.
Absolutely.
You have to want to do this. Was there a turning point for you when you said, I'm going to do this?
Absolutely. For me, it was probably, I was approaching my 39th birthday, and that was the age my mother was when she died. And so I went through a lot of self-exploration, and I realized that at 14, when my mom died, I'd never really grieved her. So for the first time, I went to a therapist for grief counseling. And she helped me come to terms with the fact that just because my mom died at 39, I didn't have to die at 39.
Right.
And that was what kept me from dating. I hadn't dated in 10 years. I wasn't interested in having children because I didn't want to leave children behind. So when I really had grieved my mother and acknowledged the loss, it was a big turning point that said, I'm now ready. So if I had gone to the ranch, The Biggest Loser, before that had happened, I don't know if I would have been as successful. I really did do a lot of personal work before I went to do the physical work of losing weight.
Well, what is it? You can't begin until you're ready to start.
That's right.
You know? Just as an aside, you're a celebrity. You went out to L.A. Isn't that where they shoot it? They shoot in L.A., don't they?
Absolutely.
Right. And so what was it like? What did you think of the cameras and the action and all of that?
During the whole show, I kind of hid in the back because if you can imagine, nobody wants to be morbidly obese on TV. At least I didn't. I wanted to get the health and be in the background, and I was very ashamed, actually. And that was one of the things I learned in the show. I was very ashamed of how obese I had become. So I didn't really want to be in front of the cameras. And so as a result, I don't think people really got to see my story until the end. But that I was very aware of being shy around the cameras because I wasn't ready for people to see that I needed help.
Right, of course. All right, tell me one last thing. Advice for people. Now, people watching right now, some may be in that position that you were in. What's your advice to them?
My advice to anyone who really wants to lose weight is, number one, look at why you have a problem with food and your weight. And number two, be humble. Don't feel like you have to do it on your own because there's lots of help. And my mistake was always isolating and trying to do it on my own. So I would say humbly and wholeheartedly ask for help and be open to having people help you.
What an inspiration you are. I'm telling you. Plus, you look fabulous.
Well, thank you, Jesse. It was
This is
so
great.
nice to meet you.
So
and
we have
see
a
you.
celebrity amongst us. Oh, you're from Clifton Park, right?
Absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
That's great. Well, look, if you see more of this, see this interview for a second time, please head to our website, looktvonline.com.